Well, in front of a backdrop of Oban today, and I've got to bring you a question. And the question is, what is it about Scottish independence that will prevent the corruption from Westminster simply coming up here and killing our Scotland after we've all voted yes? Well, you'll be pleased to know that there's good news. And I can answer that question, and I can categorically tell you that the corruption won't come up here. And it goes directly, I suppose its roots are in the Declaration of Arbroath. And that's firmed up in the 1689 Claim of Right. And it's crystallised in the 1989 firming up of the Claim of Right. So, let's go to the Declaration of Arbroath. It was a letter from a Scottish king that we all know, Robert the Bruce, to the Pope. Now, the Pope did actually reject the letter, but the point is that if you look at the bottom of that letter, there are signatories, and those were the people who used to run Scotland. They were the head honchos. They were the people whose opinions mattered and counted. So, and those people all had the backing of the general population. So the Declaration of Arbroath comes from the people, and it comes through their heads of community, and then it gets to the Declaration. And that Declaration speaks about the people of Scotland holding sovereignty, and it speaks about them lending it to their ruler. Now that ruler eventually evolved from kingship to your politicians, your head of state. Not head of state, but the head of parliament. So that was then firmed up in 1689 by the Claim of Right. And the Claim of Right then again talks about the people being sovereign, and it talks about the people lending that sovereignty to whoever rules them. Back then it was a king. So the 1989 Declaration, the 1989 Claim of Right, then makes it crystal clear that the people lend not just their sovereignty, but their will to be governed by whoever they choose, so whom they ever choose to be ruled by, but they retain the right to withdraw their lend of sovereignty at any moment, should there be something done that goes against the consensus that that person was voted in by. Thereby, the Scots retain the right to take back that sovereignty and then give it to somebody else that can do their bidding as per their mandate. So why does that stop corruption getting into the system? Well, it's because the Scots retain the sovereignty. It's because they can basically get rid of whoever governs them if they're not governing to the will of the people. So it's the democracy and the will of the people that dictate what people in power do. And if the will of the people smell corruption and they want to live in a Scotland free of corruption, they need to use that claim of right. Right now, you have the Scottish government doesn't actually sit at Holyrood. That's the Parliament. They just talk. And they're actually a branch office of the Westminster establishment. It was set up when the Scottish Parliament was set up, and it was set up in such a way that the wings were all clipped, and the devolved powers and all this kind of thing. And this is kind of where the term devolved powers or powers retained comes from. So the Scottish government still have the right, because one thing I didn't mention about the claim of right, it states, and it has stated through the 1689 claim and the updated version in 1989, that nobody can vote the claim of right out of existence so long as Scotland is a country. The claim of right stand. No wonder the Westminster establishment's so keen to abolish Scotland, because the thing that separates us from England is Scots law. They separate Scots law. Claim of right goes, Scotland goes, the game's a bogey. But so the only way they can get rid of this claim of right is to abolish Scotland. The only way they can abolish Scotland is to abolish Scots law, and then have English law supersede Scots law. That is never going to happen in my lifetime. Well, I'm certainly going to fight for that not to happen. So it might be a bit arrogant to say that I'm going to stop it and all. Yeah, but I'm hopeful that everybody else will jump on board with me and people like me to make sure the claim of right stays in Scotland and absolutely preserves the sanctity of Scots law, which then preserves the sanctity of Scotland, which then preserves our right to self-determination. The claim of right and the sovereignty of the Scots as a people, and the ability to take back possession of that lent out sovereignty is key to making sure corruption does not follow out of Westminster and into Scotland as we become an independent nation. As long as we have the claim of right, that corruption is in the hands of the people, and the people will use the powers that the Scottish Government have right now to convene the estates, and they can have a convention of the estates to then vote on something that's come up of importance, like the government that we've elected not doing the bidding of the mandate that the people have given them. That situation is something that can be invoked by our government declaring salvo. Salvo then brings about a convention of the estates, and all these signatories I was talking about earlier in the Declaration of Arbroath went on to form those estates, and they can be convened to make sure our government does the bidding of the people. Corruption can't live in that environment. So there you go. Goodbye from Oban, and I hope you come to Oban. It's a beautiful place, the music's great, it's so chilled. Oban, be there or be square. Ta-ta!